Hi everyone, welcome to Office Hours. Sorry that we got started a little bit later. I was a little busy putting together some of the optical illusions. So, hopefully you all can hear me. Let me just check my audio settings. All right, sounds good. I just got confirmation. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy to have you guys all here on this our second week of Illusion Month. So today what we're going to do is we are going to go through how the eye kind of works, like the mechanics of our eye, and kind of compare that to like cameras and how, like, our digital cameras work. Like, what are they doing? And then we're also going to talk about how these optical illusions are tricking our photoreceptors into seeing things that aren't really true. And it's mostly because our brain is just simply trying to make sense of the information it's receiving. Our brain's an overachiever, like the title of the stream said. So, before we get into that, though, I do want to go over the problem of the week. So, congratulations to my dad who solved it. I didn't receive any other solutions, but I did have quite a few retweets on Twitter, so I was really excited about that. So, thank you. Let me just double check the names. Thank you, Buzz Mowgli and Mike Fadum. Uh, Excellent job, husband. You get Omega husband points for that. And also, thank you to Dark Phoenix for retweeting as well. So, hold on. I think I actually. Oh, and welcome to Ryan Awesome for following us. So, very, very excited. If you would like to. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Phoenix Blue, for also retweeting and making an excellent joke about the problem of the week this week. So, if you guys would like to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is at OH with ML, and I would love for you guys to connect with me in that other aspect. Also, I'm on Facebook. So get the news out there. If you guys share any of my posts or the problem of the week or any of the YouTube videos or leave a comment, I'll definitely mention you on the stream because I'm just looking forward to building our community of learners. So let's talk about the problem of the week. So the problem of the week was all about binary. And let me just go to here. Yep. Okay. And we want to figure out how we could use binary to represent the number 53 or 63. And I did go over how to kind of do binary in a live stream about a month ago. And I posted that live stream as a hint for how to do it this week. But let me just remind you how to actually do binary here. Let's see. Okay. So, all right. The way binary works is we can only use zeros and ones. And if we have a zero in a place value or a bit, as it were, that means it basically, like, it doesn't count. It has no value. But if we have a 1 in that bit, it has value. And the way we write binary numbers is we actually start at the right and kind of build up to the left. So we would start with 2 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power equals 1. And then the next space over is 2 to the first power. So that's going to represent 2. And then this is going to represent 2 squared. And the reason why we're using 2 is because we have 2 bases, either a 0 or a 1. So then we can go 2 to the 3rd, 2 to the 4th, 2 to the 5th, and 2 to the 6th. And generally, we stop at 2 to the 7th. This would actually be called a 64-bit code or 64-bit piece of information. The reason for that is 2 to the 7th actually equals 64. So basically, if I have a 1 in the first part, that means I have 1. If I have it in the second space, I have 2. If I have it in the third space, I have 2 squared, which is 4, then 8, then 16, then 32. Oops, sorry, 64 stops there. Mea culpa. I was just too excited. So basically, if I want to write out 53, what that means is I would not be able to have a 1 in the 64 because I'm going to basically put zeros and ones to indicate what power of 2 I want to include. And 64 is too large, so I'm for sure going to have a 0 there. Then I could have a 1 here in 32, indicating that I at least have 32. So I'm going to go minus 32, and then that gives me 21. 21 is bigger than 16, so that means that I want to put a 1 in the 16. I'm going to go minus 16. 21 minus 16, that's going to give me 5. So because 5 is smaller than 8, I have to put a 0 there. But 5 is bigger than 4, so therefore I have to put a 1. And 5 minus 4, equals 1. So therefore I would have to put a 0 here, and then I have to put a 1. So in 64-bit binary, which is the typical binary that you use for computer programming, or maybe it's 160 or 128 now, but in typical 64-bit binary, we would represent the number 53 with the following number. 53 would basically equal, let me do that here, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. And this is 64-bit. But if we're dealing with fancier equipment and more intense computer programming, we probably would add another one, which would be 128-bit code. So if it was 128-bit code, then it would be 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Because again, we always kind of write binary from the right to the left, and the leftmost is going to be the biggest power that we have. All right. So that's the first part. That was number 50. That was 53 in binary. And then if I wanted to do 63, the shortcut to 63, or really any number that is 1 less than a power of 2, is that basically we are going to have to include every space underneath that power of 2. So, for example, 63, well, I know I can't have anything in the 128, so I would put a 0. I can't have anything in the 64, but I see that 64 is just 1 more than 63. So if I put a 1 here, I'm just going to kind of work through it here so you can see that it holds true. I have 63 minus 32. So then that is going to be 31. I don't know why that took me so long. And 31 is bigger than 16, so I have to put a 1. So minus 16. Yes, I still have to do manual carrying. 15 is larger than 8, so I have to do a 1. 15 minus 8 is 7. 7 is larger than 4, so I have to put a 1. And then 3 is larger than 2, so I have to put a 1. And then finally 1 is 1, so therefore I have to put a 1 there as well. So that means that to write the number 63 in either 128-bit or 64-bit in binary, in 64-bit it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or 0, 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in 128-bit code. One thing I've always wanted to do, ever since a good friend of mine, Nicole Rudolph, posted this article about the women who... So the computers that sent men to the moon and basically carried the space program, the construction of the wires and the motherboards were so fine and finicky that they actually had crafters. They had needle crafters come in to weave the boards together, essentially, and weave the wires together. And I just think that would be such an interesting project to translate something into like binary and do it with knitting. Because in knitting you have two types of stitches. You have a knit and you have a purl stitch. And so you could translate numbers and letters into binary and make a really cool pattern. So that might be something that I work on and then post the result of that endeavor. So cool. If you have any other questions about binary or different applications of it, or if you notice a mistake, like we don't actually use 64-bit or 128-bit, like this is not what it means, please send me an email, drop me a comment. I hope that I'm doing everything correctly, but I'm always open to feedback. So yeah. Okay. Without further ado, let's go ahead then and talk about how our eye works and like what's going on with that. Okay, just warning you, there are going to be medical diagrams coming up, so they don't, in my opinion, they don't get too graphic, but I do know that some people get a little squeamish when it comes to medical diagrams, no matter how not lifelike they are. So, just warning you, there's about to be a medical diagram of the eye. Okay? All right, so the way your eye works is that basically it's a hole in your head. And through... Sorry, I know. Really eloquent. The way that light enters into your brain. So everything we see around us, everything we are perceiving is based off the information carried in a light wave. So there has to be some way for that information, for that light beam to get into the back of your retina in order to transmit information to your brain. So the way that the light enters through your hole is through your pupil. The reason why your pupil is black here, and everybody's pupil is black, is because it is literally an open hole in your eye. All right? we don't have any coloring there that's making it. Where the coloring comes in is the iris. And so depending on your different levels of melanin, or I think it's melatonin, your eyes can have different colors. So that's basically what's causing that part. The color part of your eye is called the iris, and it actually acts like an aperture of a camera. It can contract and expand in order to either let more light in or less light in. The reason why your eye doctor always has to dilate your eyes, which is basically causing your iris to expand, actually to contract and to make the pupil larger, is because they're going to literally look into your pupil to see what's going on with your retina. And that's why, like, when you go to the optometrist and they shine that light in your eye after it's been dilated, you can actually see, like, your veins and, like, different stuff happening. It drives me crazy. But basically, the front bit of your eye, this iris, it works as light control. So when it's really dark and you need more light, you need to absorb as much light as you can, your iris is going to contract, making your pupil larger and allowing just more light to come in to your photoreceptors. If you've ever experienced like walking from a very dark room, like a movie theater, out into the sunlight and your eyes are like, ah, God, because you're just receiving too much, it's because your iris is a muscle. It takes time for it to contract. So that moment where you're kind of going blind from the visual stimulus of all that light going into your eye, and then when finally you get used to it, or like your eyes adjust to the light level in the room, that's just your iris muscle kind of doing what it needs to do. The white part of your eye is called the sclera. It's just basically a protective coating over the retina. And really your eye is just a ball of liquid. So the front part of your eye here, the cornea, this is where the light first starts to get focused, because light is just coming at your eyeball from every different direction, right? So in order to get to where it needs to go, the back of the retina where all the photoreceptors are, it has to be focused a little bit. And so your cornea is the first thing that does the focusing. Then as it passes through the iris, you actually have a lens in your eye. This lens is just like the lens we have in all of our digital cameras or in our glasses, that sort of thing. It's the same idea, and we'll talk more about that at a later date. Maybe even next week. I don't know. Depends on if I can get my lenses in time. Your lens here, really interestingly, is connected to a set of muscles called the ciliary muscles. And these guys can either stretch or contract your lens to help the light get focused on a different part of your eye. Have you ever noticed that, like, if you're reading a book and then all of a sudden you look up and everything kind of is fuzzy for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it comes into crystal clear focus? That is because your ciliary muscles need time to kind of stretch and contract to kind of get the light just right. Your brain is controlling all of this, because when your brain receives a fuzzy image from you looking up, it's telling your eyeball, hey, I need that lens stretched. I need it stretched a couple micrometers or whatever. So that's also where eye strain comes in. If you are trying too hard to focus on something, but like your lens or your little muscles have been stretched to their capacity, you're actually going to get eye strain. So that's why people who are like nearsighted but not wearing reading glasses tend to get excruciating headaches when they're reading. And it's simply because their poor little eye muscle is like, I can't do it, Captain. I'll stretch it as far as I can. You know, Star Trek. Sorry. So it is a muscle. It can get overworked or overstretched. Okay. So where the magic happens is the very back of the retina. Your eye is just filled with kind of this viscous fluid. And that's what helps us keep the shape. But also, like, our eye is very malleable because it's basically just a sack of fluid, right? And there's been a lot of horror movies where they make that very clear. Gross. But on the very back of our retina is where we have all of our photoreceptors. And the photoreceptors, each little photoreceptor has a little nerve that's connected to the optical nerve. And this optical nerve is what is actually connected to our brain and sends the impulses and the information of what we're seeing. So if you have some sort of visual damage to either the optical nerve or within your eye, like you have some damage to the eye itself, you are not going to be receiving images as clearly. So when we talk about lenses and mirrors and those types of illusions that we can have, I'm hoping to do that next week or maybe the week after. It depends on when some stuff comes in. Then we'll talk more about visual challenges like nearsightedness, farsightedness, and astigmatism, and how we correct for that. But another place where things can go wrong is this single connection from the eye to the brain. Now, we have two eyes. So that means that our left eye is perceiving things slightly to the left than our right eye. And this is what allows us to have depth and experience depth in that way. So one way to kind of see this, it's a really quick, easy experiment. And let me show you. So what you can do is you could just take your thumb and kind of start at your nose and then stick it out and focus on your thumb and then cover one eye. Then cover the other eye. And it really helps if you have something behind your thumb to kind of look at, like, you know, take kind of like your drink can or something like that and like focus on it and then move it. What you'll notice is as you close one eye, then the other, your thumb appears to move, but you haven't moved it. This is an illusion, but it's more that our eyes are separated just enough that my left eye is perceiving things from the left, my right eye is perceiving things from the right, and therefore when I put that image together, I get a 3D view. If you've ever heard of people who have issues with depth perception, there's something going on between the connection between their left and their right side. Either they aren't quite putting the image together correctly, or there's some damage with their ocular receptors. Also, if you've ever gone to a 3D movie, when we can go back to movie theaters, oh man, I miss it so much. But the way 3D works is that we have polarizers, which are essentially gratings on the glasses, and they only let a certain direction of light through. So really, if you take off your glasses and you look at it, the reason why everything's hella fuzzy is because it's actually up to like basically 3 images on top of each other. A center one for your right eye, and then one for your left eye to perceive. So then when you put on the glasses, your right eye is only receiving, say, like horizontally polarized light, whereas your left is only receiving vertically polarized light. Then when your brain puts it together, it becomes a 3D image. So next week we'll go a little bit more into that because it's a really cool optical illusion, and it works because your brain is an overachiever. All right, so let's talk about some more optical illusions. So talking about the photoreceptors, that's kind of like where I want to focus today. We have two types of photoreceptors, rods and cones. Sorry. I want to go back over. No. Okay, sorry. We have two types of photoreceptors, rods and cones. The first one I want to talk about is the rod. Now, the rod does not help us see color, but rather the rod helps us see the intensity of light. So whenever you stare at a bright light, kind of like the ring light I have shining in my face right now, when you close your eyes and you can still see that kind of bright dot, that is because your rods have been exhausted. Basically, the light was so intense, it kind of burned an image into your eye. And even when you close your eye and you're no longer receiving that light information, your rod is still like, freaking out. So basically, these receptors have these kind of like frequency gills sort of thing, and they vibrate according to certain intensities of light. And then they send that information, that special vibration, through a little nerve to your optical nerve, to your brain, and then your brain perceives it as, whoa, that's really bright. So some things that we can notice with these optical illusions. Hold on. Okay, there we go. For example, this illusion is called the Scintillating Grid illusion. And if you kind of move your eye around the grid, it looks like these black dots kind of appear out of nowhere and then disappear as you move your eyes around. And one of the theories behind this is that the information is almost a little overwhelming, and so certain of the rods just kind of shut down. And this has been refuted because the illusion breaks down, or at least it's not as strong of an illusion if the lines are not straight. My theory is that your photoreceptors are just getting a little freaked out and exhausted. So in fact, I want to show you what happens with this illusion when the lines become wavy, because it's real cool. So hold on. Okay, so I want to go to here. So here is the illusion. It's called the Herman grid, or the scintillating grid one. When it's the other way, so you either see black dots on the white lines, or you'll see white dots on the black lines when it switches over. But we can see here that the, why is this not, oops, one moment please. This is not working. Oh. Okay, well, I will hook up the, I'll I'll hook up the website for next week because right now it's not doing it. But basically, when this with this one, it's kind of like everything is such high contrast. So our rods are kind of going crazy in this illusion. And we're seeing darkness where there isn't darkness. And we're seeing light where there isn't necessarily light. So there's definitely something going on. We don't 100% know why this effect happens. And it happens to a different degree for different individuals. So some people see a lot of black dots. Some people don't see a lot. A lot of like psychologists believe that, you know, oh, maybe it's like a thing about stress or whatever. But no, it's just everybody's brain perceives things slightly differently. Okay, so another place where our rods kind of fail us is that we know that shadow tends to mean that if something is in shadow, it should be lighter, or you know, there's kind of some weird things happening with the intensity of light. So I posted this through the week, and I wanted to know which square is darker. So to me, if I just look at this picture, A is clearly the darker one. I mean, it's just obvious. A looks way darker than B. But I'm here to tell you that they are the exact same color. And part of it is because B is in shadow. And also we're taking the context from the surrounding squares that were like, B has to be a white square and it's in shadow. So therefore it's got to be lighter in real life, right? So our brain is telling us it's lighter. And let me show you what's going on here. Okay, so I have our picture here. And this is A. Let me make that a little bit more obvious. And this is B. Okay. And what I've done is I've taken a piece of cardstock that is all one color, and I've cut out where A and B are, so we can basically remove the context from the experiment. Let me just make sure. Okay. Again, if you guys can't hear me, please let me know. Babe, you can still hear me, right?
Hold on, switch it over.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, so on the picture with all the context, my brain is telling me B has to be lighter. There's no other choice for B. It has to be lighter. Actually, let me see if I can move this a little bit closer so you guys can see this awesome magic. Okay. Then, if I put this piece of paper over it, you can clearly see that A and B are the same color. Again, I haven't done anything weird. This is just a piece of cardstock. There is nothing taped to it. This is a picture. I don't magically move it. Without the cardstock, A looks significantly darker than B, but with the cardstock, A and B are exactly the same color. Mind blown. So, okay. Let me know if this illusion works for you or not. Whether or not A seems darker than before. Okay. All right. So again, our rods are what's responsible for kind of telling us when things are in shadow or when things are in light and the intensity. An interesting theory I heard when I went to St. Augustine in Florida to the Pirate Museum is that the reason why pirates wore eye patches weren't because they had like disease or injuries or whatever, but really it was to keep one eye in constant darkness. So when you went below decks on a ship that didn't have any light, you could then just switch over your eye patch and that eye was already primed for seeing in dark. And I think Mythbusters actually might have proved that had some standing. I'll see if I can find that Mythbusters episode and link it on office hours because it's kind of fascinating, that one. Okay. And then so the photoreceptor responsible for color is the cone. And there are 3 types of cones: red, green, and blue. And each of them are attuned or resonant with a different color frequency. So just like just like rods, cones can actually get exhausted as well. So here is an example of that. What I want you to do is stare at this flag. It's a weird looking American flag, but stare at it for a good 10 seconds, okay? I'm going to count in my head for 10 seconds. If you stared at it long enough, actually, it didn't work. Okay, if you stared at it long enough, I'm going to put it up there for a longer time. When it goes away, what you're doing is you're essentially exhausting your color receptors. And when they're exhausted, they're going to stop vibrating at the frequency of stuff that you see, and then they're gonna vibrate at the complementary. It is not working for me today. So what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to be able to see it, and it could just be that I have too much light going on here. So I'm going to try it. It's kind of started happening. But yeah, basically, just like the light intensity receivers, you can exhaust your color receptors. Also, the human eye is more attuned to different colors. We prefer things that are bright yellow green. We're able to track that color very easily and perceive it very easily, which is why highlighters, tennis balls, why the safety jackets and stuff are like that bright obnoxious yellow, and that is because that color is impossible for our eye to miss. So we can also do illusions with colors. So I also posted this one called the writhing snakes illusion, and it's kind of crazy because when you read the text, that's when the illusion kind of happens. If you look at it, whichever circle you're looking at directly is not going to move because your brain is perceiving that one that you're focusing on as is. It's just a static image. But then if you start focusing on a different circle or the writhing circle, especially if you do focus on the middle one, then the other ones seem to move around. And the reason for that is your color receptors, it's this pattern of light to dark to light again that's kind of causing your brain to think there should be some movement there. We are moving from light to dark to light again. So it's kind of perceiving the future a little bit, or what it thinks is the future. Another really interesting thing is that your brain needs context for its perception. We process an enormous amount of information. And so your brain takes context clues to try and figure out what the heck it's looking at. One thing, if that previous illusion didn't really work for you, it could be potentially that you have some color blindness, or your perception of colors isn't quite the same as someone else. So one way that we test for color blindness is these color dot circles. And people who are colorblind cannot perceive the difference between some colors. Like, for example, the protanope simulation, that is a red-green deficiency in your cones. And so we can see here that the 2 is virtually indistinguishable from any of the other dots. Whereas if you have a different type of color blindness, maybe like a red deficiency, you can't see the subtle differences between the pink and the orange. Or if you have a red, I think like red green or red blue, you can see that the 2 is very clear here, but the distinction between the orange and the red is very sparse. So what causes color blindness is the fact that your cones, you're either deficient or they just aren't quite perceiving in the same way. So yeah, we can go more into that. If you're interested in going more into color blindness and how we correct, there's actually glasses that correct for color blindness. And if you're interested to see how they work, please send me a comment, leave me a message on Facebook, or send me a tweet. I would love to look into that. I think it's fascinating, and I always try and make sure that I account for color blindness on things that I make, and I realize that I fall a lot into able-bodied color perception because I just really love my reds and my greens. But those are the ones that a lot of people actually have trouble distinguishing between red and green. Sorry. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, very cool. So, yeah, my dad was just telling me that, yeah, he can't see the difference at all with that one. Very cool. Cool. The truth of the matter is we all see color a little bit differently. I don't know if you guys remember the hubbub that was caused by this dress. So in the picture here, it very much looks like this dress is white and gold on the left and blue and black on the right. What caused people to just like freak out was the fact that, one, these are the same dress. The dress is blue and black. But the picture that the woman posted, because of the lighting and the context, here this very bright light behind, basically tricked our eyes into believing that we had a different luminosity quotient for the picture. And what was black was actually being seen as gold, and what was blue was being seen as white. But what was crazy about it, and what I found insane, I always saw it as white and gold, but other people could see it as black and blue. So everyone's eye is a little bit different. And then just recently, or maybe not recently, I don't know, I'm kind of out of it with the times, but Billie Eilish, who is a pretty famous singer, you know, down with the kids, she posted a picture of her Nike shoes, which are advertised as mint and white, which is what I see in this picture. But her fans were in an uproar because it looked like it was pink and white. And if you know Billie Eilish, you know that she is not a pink person. And so there was a lot of talk about that. And again, it's just how we are viewing the luminosity or the brightness of the picture. So an example of this with an illusion is a color gradient. It's all about the context. And these two skulls, even though they look completely different colors, they are actually the same color. What's happening here is our brain is processing the skull on the left to be darker because the skull is covering the lighter lines. And so we aren't seeing as much brightness, if that makes sense. We're seeing more darkness. So our brain is saying, oh, it's overall dark. Whereas over here on the right, the skull is covering up the dark lines, and therefore we're seeing more of the lighter lines, and our brain is interpreting that to be a lighter image. So I actually ended up making a office hours branded color gradient to show this off, and I'm going to show it to you right now. Hold on. I gotta get a second monitor so that way I can transition better. Okay. So I am so excited that this one works. But check this out. Okay. So what we have here is we have our high contrast gradient. So this is about the highest contrast you can have. Oh, and I need to turn off the light or else we're going to get bloomed out. And what I have here is I have the office hours logo, but cut to allow either the dark lines to show through or the white lines to show through. We can see here that they are the same color. Okay, let me actually just put it on a white piece of paper so you can see. They are the same color. Okay, but when I place them on my high contrast grading, the one that's allowing the black lines through looks significantly darker than the one that's allowing the white lines through. Then if I just shift it over, now that this one is showing the white lines, it's lighter than this one that's showing the black lines. And then if I just shift it over again, all I'm doing is taking the thing that is the same color, but I'm giving my brain different context. My brain interprets this one as darker simply because it's seeing more dark lines. So it's going, oh, I'm expecting a darker color. Whereas this one is interpreted as lighter because it's seeing more white lines. And then if I shift it over, insta chroma shift. So if you want to play with something like this on your own, I'm thinking of making little optical illusion postcard packs that I'll be selling on Coffee. So it'll be like this one, the which square is darker, and some other ones. So be on the lookout on Facebook for that. But honestly, this one turned out just so good. So cool. And you can really do this with any picture. And you can also do it with a different color gradient as long as it's a very high contrast gradient. One gradient color that works really well is navy blue and yellow. Again, that yellow, because our eye is really like hyper focused on that yellow. But black and white works pretty darn good. Wow. I could literally do this like all night. But yeah. So nice and easy illusion. And I swear there's no camera trickery here at all. So again, if you're interested in playing around with this, be checking out Facebook, and I will be posting a link to my Coffee where I think I'm going to sell the postcard packs. But should be pretty cool. Okay. So that is that one. Okay. So again, our brain needs context clues. This is from last week. I just wanted to talk about it again, just because it's such a cool illusion. So on the top, it looks like the lines are significantly different lengths. Like the top one looks like the shortest. The bottom one is like the middle one. And then the middle line looks like it's the longest. But when we give ourselves context clues of like these dashed lines, we see that these lines are all the same length. And not only that, they're all lined up with each other. Part of the reason why we interpret the lines this way is because our world is very rectilinear. And scientists have actually found that we see... oops. Thank you, Dad. My dad's the best. Okay, sorry. Let me go back to this. Our world is very rectilinear, meaning it's very, we live in boxes, basically. Everything about our day-to-day world is very square. And so when we're seeing these arrows, basically the back line here, we interpret it as longer because it seems like it's further away because of the way the little arrows are pointed. But, and then the front line, we interpret that as shorter because we believe that it is closer to us. So again, our brain being like, okay, I think that that's further away. Therefore, I'm going to interpret that as a longer line because that just makes sense because it is further away. So the further away you are, the bigger you must be. If it looks like it's the same line. But if I take away the context clues of the room, we easily see that these lines are the same length. But if I put the room back, the top one looks longer and the bottom one looks shorter. And it's just because our brain is saying, no, in a 3D space, that back line would be longer. So therefore it is. And it's like, nah, brain. You're just freaking out. This is another kind of interpretation of it. As these arrows rotate around, if you just kind of like look at it in general, it kind of looks like the arrows are getting closer together or further apart depending on their orientation. But we can see when we provide anchor points or context for our brain, the arrows are just rotating about a solid point. So all of these illusions kind of break down when you're given context, or they work off interpreting context in a different way. So this is one of my favorite illusions as well. So our brain, because we live in a 3D world, is always kind of looking for 3D-ness. And so in A, it's interpreting this vanishing point. Our eye is being drawn to that vanishing point. So as it is, the red lines here are actually look like they're kind of bending upward or downward. And what you can do with this illusion is you can actually kind of mess with a line and make it go all bendy. Yeah. And then in B, it looks like the lines are bending in because our brain believes that this is the vanishing point and this is kind of coming at us and it's a reflection. So it looks like the line has to bend in because we're anticipating that these lines are like parallel tiles going off into infinity. And so we're kind of seeing that. And then finally in part C, our brain, at least my brain, is having a hard time interpreting what the depth is for C. And I don't really see that much of a bend. I see a lot more of a bend in A and B, but not that much in C. We can also do this with a square because we're having lines go through different directions. And in D, I kind of see the square like smushing in at the sides. It's like the circle is just kind of smushing the square in. And then for E, I see it kind of bowing out a little bit. And then F, it just kind of, it looks bigger at the top than at the bottom for me. But again, if I take away these context clues, I can see that it's just parallel lines and squares. I want to, again, this illusion kind of sort of works for me, but also it's a little, it didn't really work 100%, but maybe it's working really well for you, which would be awesome. So I also kind of made this one. So again, I have my good old parallel lines here. But then once I put my context clues here, we can see that it kind of looks like if I put it, well, first of all, what I can do is I can kind of move this part underneath it. So if I look here, this line right here looks curved to me, but not this, the top one not curved as much because it's not there. But this one is looking like it's bending a lot. But then if I move it down, now these two ones look like they're kind of puffing out a little bit. And then as I move it down, then they just straighten out again. So again, this illusion works off how your brain is interpreting perspective and kind of like what it expects to happen in that perspective. The other one that we have here is the vanishing point is up at the top, and then it's like it's kind of coming at you. So when we have it here, kind of looks like the lines are coming in. And as I move it, again, when I come down here, it almost looks like the lines are trying to like bend down. And then when I go up, kind of looks like the lines are bending up like that. So this is going to be one of those illusions that you can play with in the postcard pack. So you could have like both of them like that. And when we look at both of them kind of side by side, you can see here that the top does look like it's kind of bowing out a little bit. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Again, let me know what you see. Everyone interprets illusions slightly differently than others. But yeah. Okay. Let me go back to here. Okay. What's going on? Oh, that's all I had there. Okay. Oops. So, again, context is everything. So another illusion that we talked about last week was this illusion right here, where I have a circle of big circles and a circle of small circles. And then I have two circles, which on their own you can tell that they are the same size, and it helps if I transition. Okay. I have two circles here that are definitely the same size when we just look at them on their own. But once I place them into context, my brain, interpreting the context, goes, oh, this one must be much smaller because it looks so much smaller compared to the other one. Whereas this one has to be bigger because it, in comparison to its surroundings, it's definitely bigger. So our brain is kind of misinterpreting the context or the information that we are experiencing. To prove again that these dots, I didn't magically change it. What I can do is I can just flip them around. And then the big dot went to a small dot. And then I can also go check this out. Ooh. Now it's big. And actually, when we don't have the other one to compare it, it kind of looks like it keeps the same size. But then when I have another one to compare it, it almost instantly shrinks in my mind. So your brain is just a funny thing. So those are all the illusions I kind of wanted to show you guys. So like I said, if you are interested in learning more about color blindness, or next week I think we're going to go into how lenses and mirrors work and how we actually see an image and interpret it. But yeah, so in the meantime, I do want to do one more line drawing exercise with you guys to show just one more way that your brain gets confused. And we are going to be drawing nothing but straight lines. Okay, nothing but straight lines. However, it's going to eventually look like that we have a whole bunch of curves, straight lines and curves coming together to create kind of this vortexy square. So let me just get a piece of paper and we will do that. Sorry, I had some paper here. Here we go. Okay. So what we need to do this line drawing is we need to do this first. You just need a piece of paper, a ruler, and a pencil, and then eventually you're going to need a marker to kind of do the contrast. Okay. So first order of business is we actually want to make it a square. You can get the same result with a rectangle, but a square just is going to be the most pleasing. So I'm going to just mark out 8.5 by 8.5. Okay. All right. You know what? I am going to turn on some music at this point, because it's going to just be a lot of me drawing lines. So, all right, let me know if that's too loud or if you can't hear it at all. Okay. So now that we have our square marked out, what we want to do is we want to mark, I'm going to say 1 inch, okay, from each side, but we're always going to go from the left corner. So I'm going to mark out 1 inch. Then I'm going to mark out 1 inch. 1 inch. 1 inch. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect all of my 1 inch markings. Okay. Then what you want to do is you want to mark out 1 inch along from the corner and along the new line that you just drew. Okay. And then we're going to just connect our lines again. Because we're doing the same distance, we should be just kind of making a whole bunch of slightly rotating squares. This rotation effect is going to be what kind of tricks our brain into believing that we're actually twisting downward into the spiral. So you can kind of see it starting to come out. And of course, the more squares you draw, the more dramatic this effect is going to be. I just don't want to spend like literally all night drawing squares. I know. Part of me is like looking over at my glue right now and wishing that I had some glitter, because I kind of wonder what this would look like if you did like when you during the coloring in phase, if like one part of it was glitter. I love glitter. It's such a dangerous substance. I know. And as we keep going, our squares are getting smaller and smaller. And we can kind of already see the curve like starting to look like it's happening right around here. And really, if you think about it, that's all a curve is. A curve is like an infinite number of straight lines. And like for all of my calc peeps, that's why we approximate the area under a curve with Riemann subs. What we're doing is we're just making them infinitely skinny. And like I said, the smaller your divisions here. So like if I had gone a ½ inch instead of a full inch, we would be getting an even more dramatic effect. I'm digging this. A perfect future. Okay. Yeah, we're just gonna keep on going around. Happened to my... In fact, because our brain is so good at interpreting context clues, that's how we're able to kind of trick it into believing that a 2D object is a 3D object. Because we're like, if we give our brain enough context, it's going to interpret that flat image with depth. I also like this one. It's actually kind of interesting, the history of perspective in art. Maybe we'll go into that next week. Yeah, if the stuff I ordered doesn't come in time, we might do a little art history. Because just because I'm all about science and math doesn't mean I can't be about art as well. In fact, I love the fact that a lot of schools and programs are going more towards STEAM than just STEM. The arts are so hypercritical. And also, look at all the cool stuff we can do with math that's just so pretty. So I kind of did that until basically I'm left with like an inch in the middle. And we can see here. Oh, really? I did not realize that. Oh, and by the way, darlingest husband. Okay. Just making sure. So we can see here that even though I drew straight lines, it appears that this line here is curved. And that's just because my brain is going like, oh, it's following along that line. It's being drawn towards the center. And so it's like, oh, it makes sense to smooth that out into a circle. And then if I color it in, it gets even more dramatic and beautiful. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and color it in. What happened to my Sharpie? Oh no, I'm all sad. I don't know where my Sharpie went. My big boy Sharpie. Where are you at? I always am like, I have everything laid out, and then always like disappears. Give me 1 second. I'm afraid it's gonna run out. Okay, well, that's all we got. Okay. I was hoping to do it with my big boy Sharpie, but I don't know what happened to him. Okay. So when you want to color it in, you're basically coloring in like every other square in the high context. And again, just to reinforce the fact that I'm doing straight lines using the ruler here. Just so afraid that this is gonna like die halfway through. I'm gonna be all streaky. Oh well, that's fine. Okay. Like, this part with the ruler is not essential, but I have such a shaky hand that I like to use its help. Okay. And also by using the ruler, you can see that I'm not like faking you out. And it is all straight lines, 100%. But when they come together, they create some cool effects. Okay. So basically, like, I've gone all the way in here. Now, because I started this fin with the high contrast color, that means that I need to leave this one blank, so then this is going to be green, this one's going to be green, this one, and then this one. So it creates that kind of alternating effect. So let's get to coloring. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me on this lovely Friday night. I can't believe it's the second week in April already. 2021 has been going by hella fast. Hopefully it's treating you guys better than 2020 was. Starting to run out of juice. Hopefully it lasts. Oh shoot, hold on. Yeah, overhead camera should be on. Okay. Not sure if I messed up. Because, like, if I follow this curve... Okay, yeah. Oh no, I feel like I screwed up. Yeah, that one should be colored in. Dang it! I messed up on the inside, but you know what I might do? I might just like cheat and make the whole inside square dark. I don't know. We'll see what happens. See how I feel. Okay. So because that one was light, this one needs to be dark. Then using scrap piece of paper. I don't know why I find this relaxing, but honestly, like, adult coloring books overwhelm me. I think it's because the adult coloring books just have, like, too much happening. Whereas, to me, there's something so meditative about geometric patterns. And just, I'm like, okay, everything makes sense. Until I mess up. on my alternation, and then I'm like, no! Well, I'm glad you enjoyed. Have a good night. Love ya. My dad's the best. Do, 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 do. Hi. I'm coloring.
I know. It's cool. That's really awesome.
And yeah, it looks like it's curving in. It's probably a good thing I'm not using the Sharpie. Because last week, whew, the fumes, man. I almost felt like I needed to open a window after the stream. But it just gives such good pigment, you know? Yeah, that one definitely. Yeah, I totally screwed up. No! Let's see. I had some white out somewhere. Oh, but this isn't white paper. Oh, oh, that's painful. That's okay. That's okay. I'm fine with it. I'm fine. Yeah, you're right. She was not fine with it. I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, do I cut it out? Or, like... I mean, I could. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Actually, that's like a good idea. That might be kind of cool to cut out in pieces and like lay it on top of something. I am super into like the vinyl cutout process because it is super cool. You know what? Yeah. Because I messed up, just make this whole thing. Ha! Fixed! Okay. So, this has to be white. So then this is going to be... colored in. Oh, my hand's gonna be green. Oh, it's actually not that bad. Now, if this was Sharpie, I would definitely have markings all up and down my hand. My first couple years of teaching, like my entire side of my hand would just be marked with a wet erase marker because back in my day, we had to use transparencies. And that stuff is no fun. It's kind of one of those things, like, I'm super dependent on, like, PowerPoint. because I just like having it to outline my thoughts when I'm instructing. But some of the schools I worked at in my early career just didn't have the funds for computers or projectors. And now, I mean, that is like literally an essential in a classroom. Especially in this day and age. All right. And here's our spiral. So it kind of gives me like a little bit of a Jack Burton feel. Or, you know what we could do? Let's see. Or we could go Alfred Hitchcock. Okay, let's see. You kind of see him there? Kind of do like a vertigo guy. I'm not quite sure what's happening with his legs now that I look at it. Well. So, with straight lines, we can give the illusion of curves. So, last week, we kind of looked at creating perspective and also working with actual curved lines to give that illusion. Here, we can see that all we have to do is just do... we can use straight lines, but set in a very definite pattern that tells our brain, gives our brain the context that, oh, we want to move in a smooth path around the circle, around in a circle. So anyways, thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I am actually going to call it there. I don't know about you guys. April has been a little crazy. But again, thank you guys so much. And please tune in next week where we are going to go more into like the actual mechanics of processing light and seeing images and kind of creating images. If my stuff arrives, if not, we're going to go a little bit more into like art history and how we came up with perspective and how we portray perspective in a 2D way, and kind of how surrealist and modern painters are twisting that perspective and messing with our brains, giving us some crazy mind-bending illusions. So that's all for tonight. Thank you guys so much. I hope you learned something new. And if not, I hope you're interested at least in the really awesome illusions. Like, legit, this is my favorite. I'm going back to it because I just love it so much. And that's how I'm going to sign off. But hopefully you guys really enjoyed seeing the simplicity of context. It's all about the context. Anyways, I'm going to let you guys go. Thanks for joining me for office hours, and I hope to see you around next week.